Hi everybody, this is your first of two assignments for this week. So we changed up things a little bit this week. We'll be setting you your geography as a weekly assignment in two parts. So I would suggest you always work on the first one that's posted and then work on the second. So this week we've got this one, which is assignment number 1. You can see up here. And you'll also find available to you is assignment number 2. It makes sense to do them in the order they appear. But if you choose not to, it shouldn't make too much of a difference. What's important, though, is that you watch the main lesson video, like the one you're doing now, both for assignment number 1 and also the one that comes after this, which is the main lesson video for assignment number 2. So let's have a little look at what we're doing. We are starting a brand new topic this week. We've now concluded our first main higher topic, which was climate change. So well done there that you've worked your way through that. And we will be printing that obviously off so you have a paper copy when we get back into the classroom. The one difference with this one, though, is when you submit your assignment documents, we're going to, at a later date, ask you to bring them all together. But we'll do that when we're back in school into one overall document and then print them off. So you have this as a paper document too. Of course, because this is going to be set as a lot of different assignments, there'll be lots of different documents. And you'll get feedback on everything in every document that we're asking you to do. So make sure all of this work that I'm talking about today is completed in the Google Doc that is outlined here, titled Hydrosphere number 1. Okay. And then when you're finished, make sure you hand it in. Now, obviously, you're watching the lesson video here, and you've obviously accessed this probably through the main classwork. But if you can obviously access all of these lesson videos directly through these assignments. So let's get started. What are we asking you to do? What's the key 2 tasks in this first assignment, number 1? The first key idea that we're going to deal with, outlined here, is the formation of erosional and depositional features. There is a video that goes with this, with one of the specific tasks that you're asked to do. But before you jump in and watch that, let's just have a little look at what that first task is. So the hydrosphere topic, and it's just got up in a second on your screen, unlike climate change, is a paper 1 topic. So it's one of what we call the core units, and it's a physical environment topic, which means it's to do with the natural world. We are very much looking at a similar set of ideas that you developed in the landscapes topic in National 5. So one of the key skills you've developed up to this is the ability to identify landscape features and explain how they are formed. And you will have done that for glacial landscape features like the Corrie and the U-shaped valley, as well as coastal landscape features like the Spit and the Arch, Stack and Stump. Similarly, you're going to develop on those skills, but in this context, it's going to be rivers. And there are 4 features that you have to be able to explain. And there they are in front of you: the V-shaped valley, the waterfall, the meander, and the Oxbow Lake. And when I say explain, you need to be able to talk in a lot of detail about the processes involved in their formation. Okay. You also need to understand the hydrological cycle, which is one of the later assignments that will come next week, not this week, and the drainage basin, as well as interpreting hydrographs. And once again, that is a skill. This final one is one that we'll do in week 3 when we're sort of halfway through June. Okay, let's get started in the first set of tasks that go with assignment number 1. The very first thing you have to understand about a river, and I'm showing you on the screen right now, is that a river has a series of stages. Okay, so if we think about water hitting the land from the sky, it gathers in an area. It doesn't just land in a river. It actually falls across a mountain landscape and gradually works its way from somewhere where it lands into what would be the beginning of a river. And we call this feature the source that we can see right there. Okay. And gradually, a river has, by the way, more than one source. It's got multiple sources. You can see on this diagram that there are lots of little tributaries, which are little river channels that join together to make a larger river channel. Gradually, as these minor rivers all start to join together, they start to form a larger river. and that increases the volume of water flowing through the river. And the amount of actual water that flows through a river is known as its discharge. And we'll do more on discharge later on, so I'll say no more about that right now. Now, this first phase, when the river's really steep, on a very steep gradient, is known as its upper course, and we can see that outlined here in the notes. And you get a range of features here. Most notably, you get the V-shaped valley that we can see here at number 3. And we can see waterfall here at number 4. And those are the two features that you're going to be asked to describe and explain in assignment number 2, which also has to be done for this week. As the landscape starts to flatten, we can see that starting to happen down here. So the gradient starts to flatten. The energy in the river starts to transform. There's less what we would call vertical energy, which is where there's a huge gravitational pull on the river, pulling it downwards, which ends up creating the V-shaped valley and things like the waterfall. And you'll come back to that idea later on in today's lesson. And as the river starts to flatten, that energy starts to change into more of what we call a lateral or horizontal energy. So more erosion is happening on the sides of the river rather than on the base of the river. So here's the first kind of key principle you have to understand about a river. River's got two sides, we call them the river banks, and it's got a bottom, what we call the river bed. And inside it, we have the river itself. And how much water you've got in a river will largely depend on how much has come out of the sky. Right, that's kind of some of the key things to do with this. What I just suggest you do is have a little read, use your virtual highlighter, which is up here, and just highlight some key ideas as you read. So you can do that by just selecting whatever color you want, and you can just highlight it as you read if you think it's important, like that, for example. Okay. Now, once you've read this, you're going to then move on to the next task, which is here, the Bradshaw model. And I have the first of this week lesson tutorials go with this. So what you might want to do is you might want to pause this main lesson video now and jump into the tutorial that explains Bradshaw's model. That's one here. And then it tells you how to answer it, and you will get that. That will be a marked piece of work. Or you can continue listening to me right now at the end of this lesson and then complete both of the key idea tasks that go with assignment number 1. Okay. So if you want to pause, just pause now. And if you haven't paused or you've just unpaused, welcome back to the second part, because we're now dealing with the second key idea, which is river processes. Okay. Now, you have to have your river processes really firmly understood in your mind. Okay. And the reason for that is that if you don't understand the processes in your mind quite clearly, then you're going to be unable to explain in as much detail the formation of the key features as you would like. Okay, so I will delete this later. This isn't actually part of the assignment, but in assignment number 2, you're going to be asked to explain the formation of a V-shaped valley and a waterfall. And they are features just like a corrie or a U-shaped valley or a ret, pyramidal peak, or a headland and bay. All of those different features are created by one thing in common, the movement of water, whether it's frozen in a glacier or whether it's in liquid form like the ocean or in a river. So when you think about a process like, let's just take one that you're familiar with. Let's take plucking, when we did that with glaciers. So the idea of plucking that you would be able to say is where the ice sticks to the rock and rips it up, the ice in a glacier. That is probably about as much as you said. Now, higher, you've got to be able to give a little bit more. So first thing you want to be able to do is make sure you just read this little introduction to conditions and processes. What's the difference? Idea of conditions is to do with the fact that the landscape changes and the type of rock over which a river flows changes. So the river might flow from a softer rock to a harder rock, or the other way around. And that's going to lead to the creation of a feature, possibly like a waterfall. A bit like headlands and bays are formed by the difference between hard and soft rock at the coast. So that's the conditions, or one example of the conditions. And then we've got the processes. And this is an area in hydrography that you really got to pay attention to. So what we've got for you to do in this particular task is you need to watch 2 videos that have been created by Time for Geography, which is a fantastic website put by a range of universities across the United Kingdom. And in this first one, they are going to tell you in a lot of detail about the 4 main erosional processes that go on in a river. And you're going to have to then write here after, or you can pause the video at various points, write a very detailed explanation of each of the 4. And you'll be using that when you get to your V-shaped valley and your waterfall. You'll actually be inserting these explanations into your answers. And that's a real sort of important step in doing this. So spend a little time listening closely to the video. You might even want to do a little bit of research on the internet about what is hydraulic action, what is abrasion, what is attrition, what is solution, and make sure you've got a really good definition, one that you understand what the river's doing. So don't skip the watching of this video. That's kind of important in understanding the whole process. Likewise, I've already discussed in today's lesson vertical erosion and lateral erosion. So make sure you, using the video above, you are able to explain exactly what these 2 types of energy are, because they're completely new to you. Whereas up here, you might actually recognize abrasion. It sounds a little bit like what a glacier does. You might recognize attrition and solution and hydraulic action, because they're all processes that happen at the coast. And you'll actually find with rivers, they're almost the same in terms of the process, and how it erodes away the land is the same between the sea and a river flowing across the land. Once you watch that video, there is a second video for you to watch here. And you've got to then use that to write a detail on these 4 processes. Okay. And make sure that's quite important. And that they will be more useful when you get to the other 2 features, which appear in next week's assignment number 3, which is going to be the meander and the oxbow lake. So it's quite important you sort of understand them as well. So that is everything for assignment number 1. Once you've completed that, can you please make sure you hand it in and do assignment number 2 at some point this week, because we're looking to get both of those assignments submitted by you by the very end of Friday, and then they will be marked and returned with marks and feedback, along with next week getting assignments 3 and 4.